right? So this is what people are trying to achieve basically. I got a pod here, I got a pod here. These can be L2, L3 is at here. Can I connect these together? Can I tunnel between here and here, right? Now there's an advantage of doing that because now my compute is largely simple. It's pure L2 if necessary, right? Just IP addresses, no tunnels on the compute, no need for orchestration software. By the way, just because I'm doing VXLAN from the server, I'm not taking a performance penalty of losing, TCP checksum offload, LSO, LRO, all those kind of things that used to give me performance before, right? So there are no overheads of tunnels here. Now the switch, why would I run the tunneling from the switch? Very simply, switches have TCAM. This is one nice thing that happened in the new generation of switches. I got full in-cap, decap support on the switch. Broadcom or Intel, doesn't matter. I can do in-cap, decap right there, right? So now, can I run my FabricConnect or equivalent? FabricConnect is a NetWiser construct. But you can do this with any guy. Anyone who has a Broadcom Trident 2 chip should be able to achieve this, right? Run the tunnel, say very simply, here is a VM. Actually, maybe I have a slide there. I've got a VM1 wanting to talk to VM2 in two different pods, same IP subnets, right? But the hypervisors and the actual IP subnets underlying are different, right? How do I get this to work? Right? Very simply. Start with one tunnel first between two switches. They can be top of the rack level or they can be at the spine level, doesn't matter, in two pods. Pick one switch here, pick one switch here. Run FabricConnect here, run FabricConnect here. Get them to create a tunnel.
So you are not a fan of software-based VTEPs?
I hate software-based VTEPs.
Understood.
It is taking us 10 years backward from where we are.
Okay.
Right? Last 10 years of my life before Pluribus, I spent fixing how do you run virtual switching in hardware offload? How do you run TCP with hardware, stateless hardware offload?
Do you have published performance statistics with server-to-server performance?
We can actually publish this.
I think that'd be super useful.
Yes. So we find out that we have gone backward in time. Earlier, I could just buy a dumb switch from somewhere, connect a bunch of servers, and I could talk. Now all of a sudden, I need orchestration software to actually talk, right? So this server-to-server tunnel is, again, it's trying to achieve something, but if you look at the problem it's trying to achieve, where I can have disjoint L2 networks and I want to connect. By the way, the guys who created server-to-server tunnels themselves, at least initially, thought that an offloaded version of this would be useful, right? But I don't know what happened in between. So very simply, one tunnel, and you can have multiple pods like this. You can have orchestration software, but it's not as big a necessity at this point because all you're trying to do is run one tunnel between two switches, basically, right? Now, the interesting part is this is where NetWiser kicks in, basically. All we need to do is when we see a VM like this before, when we see a ARP or a L2 package come out, which misses the L2 hardware table here, comes to our control plane. NetWiser already has a global visibility across the fabric. Keep in mind, our fabric protocol runs over TCP/IP. We know which VM is where. We know that VM2 with IP 10.1.1.2 with this MAC is tied to switch Fabric 2. Because we ran FabricConnect here, I know I have to go through a tunnel to get there, basically, right? Very simply, all we need to do is take the DeskMac, put a flow rule here based on ARP or L2MIS, saying that any DeskMac packet going to this side needs to go through the tunnel, right? It's actually, believe it or not, in NetWiser, this code is 5 lines of code based on what we already have, because assume that our control plane and whatever, we already done all the work. This was just a 5-line addition to say, oh, got an ARP miss. Oh, where is that switch? That switch is tied to a tunnel. Let me find out the tunnel ID. Let me create a flow with this DeskMac on that tunnel. On the receiving side, whatever comes out of the tunnel Just decap it and let it go into the network.
So this is all under the assumption that layer 3 is pushed down to the top of rack. Because if you have layer 3 in the spine, you just simply route, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Does it make sense? So this is what we are adding, what we call NetWise FabricConnect, basically, due out early next year, which allows you to run line rate tunnels from switch to switch, right? And by the way, because of the TCAM capability on these switches, we can run 24K such entries straight out from the hardware, right? If it's an Intel-based switch, we can run 24 plus 32K entries straight out of the hardware. If you run out of those also, pick another 2 pair of switches from both sides, create another tunnel, right? And you now double your capacity in hardware. Also, if you want to do SLAs while you're doing this, you want to create a tunnel for a specific tenants, you want to do all those kind of things, everything is possible, right? No magic here. This is what I'm saying. I'm saying this on camera. I'm saying this to people. I went to Stanford. I said it to them as well. Guys, let's move forward. The switches are very open. The switches have all these capabilities. You don't want to use NetWiser. Be that way. Why don't you build this capability into the switches? Everyone has same switches anyway, right? The other part is that, we should start getting the orchestration guys, people who are building the OpenStack based orchestration and so on and so forth, to start figuring out how do you want to orchestrate, because there's more to it than just running the tunnel and getting the connectivity going. Challenges are still there, right? Services. What do we do with them? The VM is here, but the services it's tied to, or the IP and all those, is probably living here, right? Can we have, in your question, a virtual router here, a virtual router here, which both can serve the same routes, but override the default route of this guy to go to the local virtual router instead of actually the virtual router it thinks it should be going to.
So rewriting kind of packets on the fly then, or frames on the fly?
Or creating the flows on the fly. We're not rewriting frames on the fly, but we are changing the paths on the fly. But keep in mind, this is what SDN and OpenFlow has been trying to do for a while. And small scale, they have been successful in doing it. I think we just need to figure out the better scales at which they can do this. Because these are not static flows that you're configuring. These needs to be dynamically created on demand, right? But if you really truly believe in what, server switch and switching is becoming server centric, why would you not write the code on the switches itself to actually do this orchestration from the switch itself, right? I've lost some people, I think. Have we gone too deep into the tunnels?
I sort of like how you're describing, having 2 active routers for a given segment, where you said you'd have to rewrite it, and like those are some of the details. And again, like I don't necessarily, as a user, would care about. I just want a solution that has active outbound gateways within a segment. If you're going to rewrite things underneath, hey, do whatever you have to do. But I'm just saying, but it doesn't sound like that's like a native solution. They have to figure out like what flows you want to rewrite and then configure that.
I agree with that, but I've seen a lot of people getting stressed out and challenged with L3 configuration as well. Keep in mind, L3 configurations are not that simple either. And what I've seen in industry, this is in the last 20 years, I've seen where you go in and all of a sudden, you'll meet 50 IT guys in a company who had brains and capability to do this are being shrinking to 2 guys who are always backlogged. They need something done very quickly, whatever. This is where we are getting to package solution more and more, right? I mean, we don't create OpenStack, we just bundle OpenStack on our switch controller, and all of a sudden people are starting to deploy that. It's like, guys, that was just for primarily the reason OpenStack on a Pluribus switch exists, on our controller exists, for our own testing. Because our guys were tired of putting all the plugins together, and every 6 months the plugins get revved and whatever, and so we just created some packaging, and then someone added a CLI command called OpenStack create, and you can just bring up Horizon in one shot in on a switch, right?
So if you deploy OpenStack here and you leverage Neutron, what's the L3 agent here?
What is the L3 agent? The L3 agent will still be a virtual router instance, basically.
where do you put that instance?
On the NetWiser itself. You'll put on one of the switches, basically, right?
Well, not us, right? So that's it's an integration between OpenStack, Neutron, and the solution. So
Yeah.
if you want to create a new tenant, you want to create an L3 port, an L3 router with an OpenStack, I guess. So it's not. I want to make sure it's like not where I want it. It's basically how you've implemented Neutron. So I guess where do you spin up that L3 router?
I think that the interesting part is that between our switch domain, given that how our clustering works, we look at any switch which has the resource in terms of, can it host on a virtual router? If it is going to be software heavy, does it have CPU and memory to do this? And we just pick one. It doesn't matter in our control fabric how and where, because everything is equally accessible. Now, can we be smarter about saying, hey, instead of picking you because you're my top of the rack, I picked this top of the rack, I added one extra hop. Maybe I added 300 nanosecond latency to that packet.
Right, so you're kind of going for simplicity in operation over and above then complexities of rolling out multiple virtual routers and whatever. So just make it work, keep things simple. If you have to go across a spine to get somewhere else, then so be it, 'cause it's fast anyway. So is that what you're kind of saying?
I think that's what we propose to people who don't have the capability.
Right.
Right? Because Pluribus is not about, we're not layer 3 high-end configuration guys. We support layer 3, we support layer 2, but if you don't have as a customer capability to deal with all the heavy layer L3 lifting, I will give you a simplistic solution. You can probably improve on it, but the simplistic solution is 99% there, which is kind of built around here. Let me allow you a way to connect your fabrics together. Let me allow you to connect multiple data center together, right? Maybe your virtual routing is still running here basically instead of here. Maybe you have some added overheads here, but these are sub-microsecond overheads in most cases. These are not very heavy overheads. You won't even notice it. By the way, if you decide to split up your VMs across 2 data centers, do you really care about sub-microsecond? Right. But the guys who are really fighting for nanosecond level latencies are not doing this kind of stuff. So sacrificing a little bit of performance, very small performance, to provide simplicity is what we are touting, what we are telling people. But you have enough nuts and bolts here to go and build what you want. We're not stopping you from doing that.
So really what you're saying is the tools are there in the toolbox to do what you want effectively.
Yes.
But keep things simple, I think, is your kind of aim to get things working.
Yes. And the place where our sweet spot is right now, because we went down the path for running large fabrics. We got pulled into this path from some of the bigger guys saying that I want to run, do you understand how many racks we have? We're going to run these fabrics at the level of 100K racks, right? Okay. Can you scale at that level? And then we found out that a lot of people, including people who have that kind of gear from us, did not go and put everything in the single rack. What we are finding out is the deployment model seems to be moving towards 12 to 24 racks in one pod. Now, if you look at where the compute capacity is today, that's an immense amount of compute capacity, right? What used to be a mega data center today can be literally narrowed down into 12 to 24 racks, right? Your cost is going down quite a bit because, with Actons and guys like that producing 40 gig by 32 port switches, this is Trident 2 primarily, you have enough capacity at the spine layer that you don't need to go to the bladed chassis. You can actually have a fixed chassis. We provide HA and whatever, so you get 2 of these. And you top of the layer, you can have up to 2 dozen of these going to the same spine, and then you can spread these out via FabricConnect if you want. That seems to be the sweet spot. And a lot of it is driven by application parts, a lot of it driven by human, because at the end of the day, it's still a human who's managing the infrastructure. So what they are doing is, in a lot of cases, here is one net admin, here's one cloud admin, or whatever these days this is. He owns these dozen racks or 10, 15 racks, and he puts them in one pod and manages them as one. And maybe there is a higher level policy engine that comes in and plugs into these things, right? But that's kind of what we are seeing. right? So if we can actually make kind of, multiple labs work properly, if we can make, a couple of data center works properly, but the scale is, HA at each rack level and HA at spine level, but assuming, 20 odd racks basically, that seems to be our sweet spot. And we're trying to make sure we do that very well, because our other reasoning is the guy who's doing that typically is a guy who doesn't have enough resources. Anyone going bigger than that probably has an army of PhDs out there sitting with him to actually build a better solution. So trying to give him a package solution actually works against us. So there we just go with like, okay, I got all the widgets, I got all the nuts and bolts. You put it together. And I've given you way more widgets and nuts and bolts. We let you massage flows. We can massage thousands of flow per second and whatever. And you got the capability to now go and do this. Seems to be the way to go.
So I get what you're saying now. I think I understand where you're coming from. My suggestion would be, it seems like just from the initial points that were made, that I felt like there were a little too many nerd knobs. Like if you're focusing on like, simplifying things for the guys that are stretched thin, very admirable.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, then say, okay, here's our architecture, layer 3 of the spine, done. Or layer 3 at the top of rack, and here's how it works, done, right?
Well, valid point. And we do that to a certain extent. Basically, we do give the part what Alessandro went with you is architecturally what's possible, right? And all the things we get capable of. What he didn't go through is our solution briefs, basically. And typically
I think the idea of simplifying it for those folks is very admirable. I think that's a good way to go.
The part is we are also VC funded company. If I say, the only thing I'm targeting is the simple case, and not targeting the Goldmans of the work, we can't do that, right? I get
it still could be, a small pod, again, for a larger pod, 10, based on the application, right? 10, 12 racks, let's say Hadoop. Right. IP addresses don't really matter, so, it's going to do L3 to the top of rack. So, which is possible, right? And that's no L2 adjacency is required. But going back to the original question, it's unfortunate, but I still don't know if it's possible to have a shared gateway across racks.
The way that and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that it sounds like, because it's reliant on Quagga, essentially, if you need to get processed at the top of rack, one top of rack is designated as that routing agent, essentially. And if you are connected to a top of rack that doesn't have that, essentially, you need to go through the spine and go back down to that top of rack.
You're 100% correct. That's the normal default deployment without doing L3.
Performance is good enough that's not.
Performance is good enough. And we provide VRRP, so a lot of the guys who are like that, because they actually do want to have an active standby mode, right? So they actually do create a virtual router here, another virtual router there, and VRRP connect them so that if one dies, the other comes up, basically. Right, but they are using one router to route. This is the simplistic case, but we do have cases where people are putting complex routing rules in this and trying to actually load balance and whatever. I'm not at the liberty to give the configuration, even if I had that, basically.
So for that configuration, like, do you view in the future to abstract that out a little bit or build a policy engine on top? That way the user wouldn't have to configure the complex rules saying, we want HA routers, and we want to allow communication between two zones, segments, domains, whatever you want to call them, and then deploy the proper rule set, right?
So to answer your question, we will look at abstracting that out if it meets the customer needs, right? You have to be careful with people things here as well. If you are today doing that, you as a customer is doing that, and I start abstracting out and start giving it to you as a package solution, you start feeling like, hey, Sune is trying to get my job away, right? That feeling doesn't need to come, basically, right? So we need to make sure that today the complex stuff that people are doing themselves, we're not conflicting with them, right?
Well, the industry is moving that way anyway, so I don't think that should be.
But the case you're after, because you keep coming back to this case again, even with Fortune 100 deployments, we are not seeing that case. I'm not saying they're not running that case. I'm saying they're not asking us to deliver that case. They're already capable of configuring it themselves. The guys who are actually asking us are looking for more simpler deployment models, basically, even if it means, because in all honesty, I will do this. We will go into L3 and we'll make it simplify, and we'll muck with the way we are mucking with L2 and tunnels and whatever. We'll do that with L3. I'm not going to give it to you for free. I'm going to charge you something for it, basically, right?
Do you think your target customer base is actually compute people?
We're seeing both, actually. We thought originally more DevOps and cloud guys would be very interested in us. And when I say cloud guys, not maybe the top 2-3 guys, but the next level down, CDNs and whatever. And they are definitely our big clientele. But we're seeing a lot of the traditional network operators also coming here. I think the orchestration simplicity with CLI and also the analytics, which shows them everything, people are liking that. The typical NetOp is starting to see, okay, if I deploy with Pluribus, first of all, I understand how this works. It's not a complex model of I'm getting the switch from someone, software from someone, an orchestration software from third guy. It comes as a package, right, at the white box prices. And B, I'm now getting to see what the server guys are doing, what the analytics are doing, who's doing what, where my capacity issues is, whatever. So my capabilities are getting enhanced, some of the security capability. And maybe let me show you some of the analytics stuff that we are doing before we go too far.
Yeah, I didn't mean to harp on it, but it's just, it's great, the analytics and the Fabric, single CLI, single point of management, it's all good stuff. But from a network perspective, selling to a network engineer, if they were doing a trace route, and they were going through another top of rack, it's just one of those things. Latency has dropped so much where it probably doesn't matter for the application, but it's just the perception to have to hairpin through another top of rack device seems.
Yes. It's a perception of it being unoptimized, isn't it, at layer 2, that's a kind of killer.
Yeah.
Especially the general direction of some competing products is to do the whole distributed gateway thing, and I can understand it being simplified. It's just a little bit to get your head around when, as well, the deployments for server guys are supposed to be simplified. But like Matt says, there's so many nerd knobs and so many choices.
Yeah, right.
It's interesting.
Yeah, customers don't care about that. They don't care about choosing between those two. They want, again, to his credit, they want something that just works.
Yeah.
Right. And given those two choices, I'd probably choose routing at the spine, to be honest.
If you're going to route at the spine, let's say we build a big fabric with 6 spine nodes, and then do VRRP.
On 2 of them.
Well, there's just one is working. So now everything has to go through that one, and now we're in the crazy business of odd and even VLAN type thing.
Yeah.
It's
not to mention every MLAG solution out there is limited to 2.
So. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we've been spoiled by magic distributed .1 gateways.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Over beer and wine at 6 o'clock.
I do have a question. Do you see this having any place in smaller enterprises at all, or is this really just strictly large scale build out?
We're on camera. You're broadcasting it. I'll still be very honest. Today we are in most Fortune 100s, basically. That's where a lot of this stuff is happening, right? Even though the POCs goes very fast and we get paid for POCs very fast, the integration and whatever it takes, and everyone wants something more here and there. So that's what our pain right now. The good news is that things are moving forward. We have enough to get entrenched into account. And we have enough where the guy is willing to say, okay, I'm going to expand on you. I'm already developing my engines on top of you, but you got to give me this ABC. Just an example, SNMP. When I started Pluribus, I was on camera to say, SNMP should die. It's dead. It's over. Why are we using SNMP? I ate my words over a period of last 3 years, and we have implemented a stellar SNMP support now into NetVisor. My dream is still one day I'm going to rip all this code out, basically, right? Because SNMP really should die. But we did that, basically. So that's where we are. Now, some of the smaller stuff, especially, few racks, 10, 12 racks, would appeal to mid-market quite a bit. Dave is trying to set a strategy into getting us there and getting some of the channels lined up to do that. I think that's where the bigger appeal would be. We're not doing that today. We want to go there. I think we've seen enough interest from the other side that this is going to be very quick. But I think we just started doing that. I think it took us a while to grok that as well, that there's appeal. Everyone chases the big customers, right? And then realizes that.
Fair enough.
Hang on.
So I think we've kind of got an answer there. Maybe now's a really good time for us to look at some of the demos and kind of understand the features that the customers that, like we're saying, the target customer is really going to see outside of just simply that L2 over L3, right? Because there's ways of doing that, obviously. But you guys are selling more than just L2 over L3. So
let me be very clear. We give L2, L3 away for free. We really give L2, L3 away for free. Where the world of networking is going, if you really want L2, L3 from us, if you want supported, pay us some support money. But if you just want L2, L3, we just give it away.
Sure.
Right? The money is to be made by delivering applications on top of it. We wrote the entire L2 stack, but it's not necessarily IP for us, basically. It's just something we had to do. Now, where we are going right now is people are paying money for orchestration of this network as one, right? People are paying money for tunneling. Still brings money in, especially tunneling orchestration, which is surprising for me because that should fall into the L2, L3 category bucket, basically, right? But the flow programmability, the APIs, the C APIs multi-threaded into the switch, the capability to run analytics, capability to see your entire infrastructure without needing taps and probes, running services on these box, that's where our money is coming from.
Sure.
Basically.